So we are right on the edge of this massive, massive shift in how we work. And the biggest thing holding us back? It's probably not what you're thinking. We're looking at a perfect storm, really. We've got a workforce that's getting smaller, AI that's getting smarter, and a human brain that is literally hardwired to fight the exact kind of change we need to make. The future of work, it turns out, isn't just about technology. It's about what's going on right between our ears.
The great betrayal. Wow, that's a really powerful way to think about the choice we're all facing. It really gets at this idea that we're standing at a crossroads, right? The path of mediocrity, that's the easy one. Just kind of drift along, pretend these huge challenges aren't happening. But the path of excellence, that requires us to actually face them head on. And that tension, that pull between what's easy and what's necessary, that's what's defining this moment in time.
And that path of mediocrity, it's all about ignoring the warning signs that have been flashing red for decades. See, none of this should be a surprise. The projections that were made way back in the 1980s about these demographic shifts, well, they're not predictions anymore. They're here. This is our reality now.
Now, a 5% drop might not sound like a huge number, but when you're talking about the engine of an entire economy, it's a colossal problem. According to Pew Research, by 2050, the working-age population here in the US is set to shrink by that 5%. Think about that. Even as the total population gets bigger, the number of people available to actually do the work is getting smaller. And let's be clear, we can't just birth our way out of this problem.
But it's not just about the numbers shrinking, it's about who makes up that workforce. It's changing in a really dramatic way. Just look at the data. The white population, which was 67% of the workforce back in 2005, is projected to be down to 47% by 2050. And at the exact same time, the Hispanic and Asian populations are on track to almost double their share. I mean, this isn't just a tiny tweak. This is a full-blown demographic revolution.
And this chart? Wow, it really hammers home the economic pressure we're under. For a long time, historically, we had almost 6 workers paying into systems like Social Security for every single person who was retired. By 2050, that ratio completely collapses to just over 2 workers per retiree. I mean, you have to ask yourself, how on earth does a system like that stay afloat? It's a mathematical crisis just waiting to happen.
So, okay, what does all this add up to? It means we're facing this really basic dilemma. We have fewer people, but a bigger population, and a constantly growing demand for everything. It basically backs us into a corner, a situation where we have absolutely no choice but to figure out how to get more done with fewer people to do it.
And this simple equation right here, it just lays it all out, crystal clear. You've got a shrinking labor force on one side and growing demand for everything from healthcare to gadgets on the other. That right there is the fundamental economic and social challenge for the next few decades. There's just no getting around that math.
So how in the world do you solve that equation? How do you do more with less? Well, this is where AI comes into the picture, and not as some sci-fi fantasy, but as a completely necessary tool. So the real conversation isn't, is AI going to take our jobs? It's how must AI step in to augment the shrinking number of humans, to make us way more productive and find efficiencies that we are desperate for.
That's a pretty logical question, right? Sounds simple enough, doesn't it? We have a problem, and it looks like we have a technological solution ready to go. So what's the holdup? Well, it turns out the biggest roadblock, the thing really stopping us, isn't the tech. It's something much, much more human.
And that's where things get really interesting, because this is where neuroscience comes in. The biggest barrier we have to navigating the future of work isn't a lack of good technology or not enough resources. Nope, it's our own brain's deep, primal, and incredibly powerful resistance to change.
To really get this, we have to talk about something called mental models. The best way to think about them is like they're the operating system running in your brain. They're built from every single experience you've ever had, starting from when you were a little kid, and they just run on autopilot in the background, telling you how to see the world and how to react to it. And none of us, not a single one of us, can escape them.
And here's a really powerful, personal example of this in action. The speaker's experiences with bullies as a kid created a mental model for how he should handle conflict. Just avoid it, disappear. But that programming didn't just stay on the playground. It followed him right into his career as a leader, where his job required him to face conflict. His brain's automatic wiring was in a direct fight with what his job demanded of him.
So why is it so ridiculously hard to change these models? Well, you can thank your limbic system for that. It's often called your reptilian brain. Its only job really is to keep you alive, and it sees big disruptive change as a threat to your survival. So when you're faced with it, that fight or flight response just takes over, flooding your system with emotion and instinct. Rational thought? Yeah, that goes right out the window.
And have you ever noticed how a big change at work can feel
a lot like grief. Well, there's a reason for that. MRI studies actually show that our brains go through almost the exact same emotional stages: shock, denial, anger. Yet, in the corporate world, we just throw massive changes at people and expect them to just, get with the program, totally ignoring the huge neurological and emotional journey they have to go on first. So are we just doomed to be run by our ancient, primitive brains? Not at all. But hey, this isn't a doom and gloom story. Far from it. In fact, the solution is already inside all of us, and it's honestly one of the most exciting and hopeful ideas in all of neuroscience.
Neuroplasticity. This right here is the human brain's superpower. It means that all those mental models we talked about, they're not set in stone. Your brain has this incredible ability to physically rewire itself based on new thoughts, new actions, and new experiences. We can, quite literally, build ourselves a new brain.
But, and this is a big but, it doesn't just happen on its own. If you want to rewire your brain, it takes a very deliberate 4-step process. First up, you got to be present. You have to be aware of that old mental model you want to change. Second, you have to explore your options for a new way of doing things. Third, you have to pick one new approach to really focus on. And finally, and this is the big one, you have to practice it over and over and over again until that new pathway in your brain is stronger than the old one.
So what should we be practicing? Well, before we all rush off to learn prompt engineering for an AI, maybe we need to go back to the absolute basics of just being human. How do we manage power and conflict in a healthy way? How do we actually practice active listening instead of just, waiting for our turn to talk? These super fundamental skills are the things that are really going to help us navigate the crazy future that's ahead.
So, when you boil it all down, here's where we land. We are facing a demographic reality we can't ignore, and we have this incredibly powerful tool in AI to help us deal with it. But the real bottleneck, the biggest challenge of all, isn't in the silicon chips, it's in our synapses. So the final question isn't whether the technology is ready for us, it's whether we are ready to do the hard work of changing our own minds.